Hey everyone, this video is about wrapping DIY acoustic modules to give them a super professional and clean finished look. If you didn't catch my last video, this is actually a series, and the previous video was all about building the frames and installing the rock wool. So if you haven't caught that yet, I'll drop a link in the description and a card to make sure that you have that foundation to build on. Assuming you've watched that, let's forge ahead. Before we get going, I want to let you know that I created a full-featured PDF that includes full plans for building these modules with detailed measurements, a cut list, a list of essential and additional nice-to-have tools, and a list of all of the materials with links. So make sure you grab that using the link below the video. And what that is going to give you access to actually is a full acoustics course that I'm doing on how to optimize your acoustics for home-based and professional studios. That's a free course. You can sign in with just an email address and it's yours. So make sure you grab that reference material so that you have this to be able to refer to as you're doing your own modules. With that said, let's plow ahead and get into the wrapping. So your first step is going to be to lay your acoustic module down on a flat surface. I like raising it up to about waist height. And in this case, I just use a collapsible folding camping table. The first layer that you're going to wrap with is cotton quilt batting. And the purpose of this is to add a nice base layer to the frame so you can't see the frame, and also to protect the Guilford of Main fabric as it gets applied as a final layer. Now, if you just put a layer of acoustic fabric onto the frame, a lot of times you can see through it, and you can see the studs and the blocking pieces and things like that. So that's the visual look is one of the reasons why you do it. And then the other reason why you do it is because you've cut your frames using a saw, or there might be little splinters in the framing lumber. You don't want the more expensive Guilford of Main fabric to snag on something or show a corner. So it's just adding a base layer that you can then build on top of. Now, I use cotton batting that is made for quilting. I source it from Walmart. The brands that they're keeping in stock are always changing, so I'm not going to mention a specific product, but if you just search for cotton quilt batting, you're going to find what you need. It's super inexpensive, so even if you mess it up a little bit, you can start again, it's no problem. When you're grabbing the product, you want to make sure you grab something that has the right dimensions. So you're going to be wrapping the module from the front around the edges, which are made of 5.5 inch deep framing lumber, so you have to account for that. And then they're getting pinned in the back using the stapler. So however wide your module is, in this case 4 feet, you want to add an extra foot. So you would want to make sure that whatever sheet you're getting of cotton batting is at least 5 feet wide. And that's going to account for the extra 11 inches that the framing lumber adds. And then same thing with your height dimension. You want to make sure if the module is 8 feet tall, you need 9 feet of cotton batting, because that's going to wrap around the top and the bottom plates and secure in from the back. You're going to want to lay your cotton batting out on top of the module and just spread it out in a way that there's no wrinkles and you can see that you have lots of excess on either side. Make sure again that you have enough excess to be able to wrap around the back of the module before you start stapling. We're going to be putting in a lot of staples, so using an electric stapler is a boss move for sure. I'm using a Arrow stapler and we're using T50 staples. They come inexpensively in packs of 1,250 or 5,000. So just get whatever, more than you need, because they're super cheap. And even though they're all called T50, they make different shapes and sizes of these staples. So the link to the exact ones that I'm using, which I think are the best, they're certainly easy to pop out if you need to with a butter knife. The link for those is in the included PDF, and I link directly to Home Depot's website so you can see the exact model that I'm using. The next step is to rough staple your cotton batting into place. I don't use a lot of staples for this. I'm just pinning it very loosely into shape to make sure that I have actually got enough to wrap around the back. So I just put a few staples in the backs of the top and the bottom plates and the studs to hold it loosely into place. And then once that's done and you kind of have the general shape and it's not moving around, you can use a set of scissors to be able to trim off your excess. I do not trim off the excess first before I rough staple, because if you accidentally pull the cotton batting as you're adjusting it, you could actually end up wasting an entire sheet of that stuff because you end up not having enough to wrap around one of your edges. Next up, you're gonna add more staples. Don't go overboard here. You do not need a ton of staples. You just need to really hold it in place so that you can add that extra layer of the acoustic fabric where a lot of the staple work is gonna be done. So if you space your staples out here somewhere between 4 and 6 inches, that's gonna be the sweet spot. Any more than that is unnecessary. You really just wanna hold this into place so that you can add that extra layer with the Guilford of Main fabric afterwards. Now it's time to make some corners, and there is a technique to this for sure, so pay careful attention to what I'm doing. So you want to start by gently, keep in mind this stuff can rip, so you want to be gentle here, and press it around the corner, allowing you to pin a couple staples in to hold that in place. And then once that's done, you're going to want to take scissors and you're going to want to cut in a triangle shape to get rid of the excess. So I'm going to get it roughly like that. And then you can take that excess, fold it in on itself to create a nice edge. And again, you might have to fuss with it a little bit just to get this edge looking good, and turn and fold it in on itself. And then once you get that, you can pin that in with an extra couple staples. Now note that this folding technique is different than the folding technique that you're going to use to make the corners with the final layer. Okay, so this is only for the cotton batting. Do not staple on the outside edge like this with the Guilford of Main fabric, okay? So this is just for the first layer. And yeah, it works well. It creates a nice clean corner. Again, this is going to be covered. And when you're done, trim off any excess and rinse and repeat for the other 3 corners. Now for the fun part. Let's get that Guilford of Main fabric and roll it out to cover the module. So because this fabric is the most expensive part of the build, you want to be really precious with it and not use any more than you need. Start by finding the center stud like this, and you're gonna put 1 single staple in from the back. I like to start from the center like this and work my way out. So this is just preventing things from shifting left or right. Carefully check that you've got enough on each edge, and then pin more staples in. So we're just going to be working in the broad strokes here. We're just putting in a few staples on the top and bottom plates here just to pin the fabric into place. Now, it does have stretch to it. You can pull on it, and that's great because it helps to prevent wrinkles if you're giving it a little tension, but be careful not to stretch it and stress it too much because that can actually create wrinkles. If you pull this and you try and use every little millimeter of the fabric, you can actually create wrinkles. So there's a sweet spot with it. So you want to pull, use the stretch, staple it in place, but don't yank on it. So you've started with the edge of the fabric where it was the factory edge. So now you're going to do the other edge where you're going to need to cut the roll. Now be careful where you cut here because you want some excess. You want like maybe 1 inch or 2 inches of excess. You don't want to use any more than you absolutely need to, but you also don't want to have to stretch this and really stress the fabric to get it to pin in around the back. So I like to cut into a position where I just have a little bit of overhang that I'll trim off after all of the stapling is done. And that's the sweet spot. Then just like the other side, you're going to start from the center by locating the center stud and pinning that in using your stapler from the back. And then you're going to space your staples out and just rough shape it in with staples that are maybe every 4 to 6 inches apart. Once the top and the bottom sections are pinned in, you can move to your sides. A very similar technique, you're going to start from the very center of your stud, pin it in with your stapler, and then just add staples roughly every 4 to 6 inches to rough the fabric into shape. Again, if you make a mistake here, it's pretty forgiving. You can just use the tip of a bread knife or a butter knife to pop the staples out, and that's not a problem. The fabric isn't going to get damaged from this, and you can just redo your work. Now you're ready to do your detailed staple runs where you're really pinning it in. So from here, your spacing can be maybe 1 staple every inch. You could go even more and do a staple every ½ inch. I don't necessarily think that you need to do that, but you want to make sure you add in enough staples where you're not seeing the fabric being pulled to the staple point. So you want it to look nice and even, and I think probably a staple every inch or a staple every 3/4 of an inch is more than adequate. The only part you're not going to staple at this point is the corners. Those are coming up next. Once all of your detailed staple runs are complete, you can use your scissors and trim off any excess. I don't get too close to the staples. Even though these are going to be at the back and you're not going to see them, I do like to get a nice clean edge, and I get maybe within half an inch or a quarter of an inch of the staples, but I try not to trim off all of the fabric right to that staple point. Now it's time to make your final corners using the acoustic fabric. People are going to see these ones, so take your time with these and watch really carefully. So you're going to start by folding your fabric around the corner, and you can pull it here and use some tension, but just be careful not to stress the fabric too much. Hold it nicely in place, and when you're ready, you're going to pop 3 staples in. And when I'm putting staples in at this point, I pay careful attention to the alignment and angle of the staples. So I just try to get these to look really consistent, placing the staple gun carefully, spacing them really evenly apart, and pin that in. Again, if you make a mistake here, no problem. Just use the tip of a butter knife to pull your staple out, and no harm, no foul. So now you're going to want to wrap the other faces around the back and just pin in any loose fabric. Nice. So once you're done with that, here's how the corner is going to come together. So you're going to use your hand, you're going to create a nice looking edge. You can see that there's all that excess that's in there, that's that triangular shape. Very similarly to how we cut that out on the cotton quilt batting, we are also going to carefully cut that out in the Guilford of Main fabric using our scissors. So we're just going to trim off any excess at the back. Again, this is where they're going to meet the wall, so people won't see that back part. And then leave yourself some excess here, an inch or 2 inches. And just trim very carefully with a nice straight edge the first part of your triangular piece. And then I can kind of go in a couple of cuts here. I kind of rough cut off some, a lot less than I know I need in the final angle, just so it's easier to work with. And then you can do your more detailed, nice triangular cut. Always good to do a test fit. Make sure you're not cutting off too much. You want enough that you can tuck it in behind to make a really, really nice seam. That's looking good. That's what you want. When you get it, just take your time with this. You can pin in a staple from the back. Now this is the big difference between stapling the quilt batting and stapling the Guilford of Main fabric. So here, you're stapling only at the back. There's no staples going into that plate like you did with the cotton quilt batting, because it's possible that that could either be on the floor and could scrape up your floors if there's staples there, or it could be in a visible part at the top of the panel. I also sink staples in from at 90 degrees to each other. So I put a few staples in because this is kind of a stress point in the fabric and you really want this corner to stay together. I do sink several staples in here and put them in at right angles to each other. Here's how it looks when you're all finished. That's the final staple detail. So you can go ahead now and rinse and repeat for all the other corners in the module. And once you're done, you can do a final excess trim through to remove any final excess with your scissors. All right, that's a wrap on this one. It's a terrible pun, I know. I just couldn't stop myself. So I hope you're seeing after this process how easy this actually is and how forgiving it is. I mean, if you make a mistake, you can pop the staples out using a butter knife, and that Guilford of Main fabric is just really durable. If you pop some staples in it and you need to pop them out again, no problem. It's not even going to show those signs of wear. And then the cotton batting is super cheap. So the Guilford of Main fabric is really the only spendy stuff. And I would really encourage you to spend the money on it versus trying to go with like some type of regular fabric, just because when you use these modules day in and day out, maybe move them around, maybe a friend spills a glass of wine on them. I've literally done all of those things. I spilled an entire liter of chocolate protein shake on one of my white modules, and if it was anything other than that Guilford of Main fabric, I don't think it would have come out, but I just like sprayed it with some all-purpose cleaner, I let it sit, and I used a wet dry vacuum, and it came out looking perfectly white again. And that's happened on many occasions with different things like red wines. So I just think that that fabric is not only acoustically superior, but in terms of durability, it's just worth the money that you spend on that fabric to get what you get. So stay with me into the next video, because the next step is going to be how to mount these. And I'm going to show you and discuss the different ways that you can mount them, including a really critical thing, which is air gapping. And air gapping is something that you critically have to understand when you're optimizing the results in your studio and you're using these panels. Luckily, these panels are very easy to mount, but there are a few techniques to it and a few mounting setups that I wanted to show you. That's going to be our next video, so stay tuned. If you liked what you saw here today, I'd super appreciate it if you could slap the subscribe button if you're not already, and give this video a thumbs up, maybe comment, let me know what you thought about it. And yeah, make sure you grab the detailed PDF plans for this and sign up for that free acoustics course so you can take your studio and your knowledge about how to get the best results from your audio equipment to the next level. Right on. Well, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Happy music making.